Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that their lie broke something inside you, something no apology could ever fix? This is not just a story about betrayal. It's about how a lie in Denmark taught me to speak truth in English and in life. If you've ever felt lost, silent, or like you can't find your real voice anymore, stay with me. Because sometimes the moment your world falls apart is when you finally start hearing yourself. The lie that shook me. It started on an ordinary Sunday morning in Aarhus. Gray sky, the smell of coffee, and that silence Denmark is famous for. I opened his message. Just one line. One line that broke everything I thought I knew. You know that feeling when your stomach drops before your mind catches up? That was me, sitting by the window watching the rain blur the streets, realizing the person I trusted had lied. That it wasn't even a dramatic lie. No shouting, no tears. Just quiet dishonesty, the kind that seeps into your skin. He said he'd been honest, but my gut told me otherwise. And in Denmark, where people value honesty like they value good design, clean, simple, perfect, I suddenly felt like my life was a badly built chair about to collapse. At first, I told myself it was fine, that everyone lies sometimes, that I should be strong. But here's the truth. Pretending you're okay is its own kind of lie. And when you do that long enough, you stop recognizing your own reflection. I remember walking along the harbor that evening, cold wind biting my face. People passed by with calm smiles, holding coffee cups, talking softly in Danish. I couldn't understand all the words, but I could feel the peace in their voices. I envied it. Because inside me, everything was noise, thoughts crashing, memories replaying, questions with no answers. When someone lies to you, you start doubting not only them, but your own ability to see clearly. You question every word, every memory. And if you've ever lived abroad, you know that feeling doubles. You're already translating life in another language, and now you can't even trust the translation inside your head. That night, I sat at my desk and opened my English practice notebook. But I couldn't focus. I stared at the page that said, "Speak clearly. Speak honestly." And I laughed because I couldn't even speak honestly to myself. That was the moment I realized, learning a language is not just about pronunciation or grammar. It's about honesty, about finding the courage to say what's real, even when your voice shakes. And that's where my journey began, not to learn perfect English, but to find my real voice again. Silence in Copenhagen. Copenhagen has a kind of silence that feels alive. It's not empty. It hums quietly between footsteps on cobblestone streets, between the click of bicycle wheels and the soft thud of snow. After that lie, I moved there for a new start, hoping the silence would calm me. But silence, I learned, doesn't heal you. It makes you hear everything you've been avoiding. Every morning, I biked to class through Nyhavn, where colorful houses leaned over the water like old friends whispering secrets. The air smelled of coffee and sea salt, and people nodded politely with their gentle hedge. Everyone seemed so balanced. Calm faces, slow smiles. I envied their peace. Inside, I was falling apart quietly in two languages. When people asked how I was doing, I'd smile and say, "I'm fine." But the Danish version, Jeg har det fint, somehow sounded more fragile, like paper about to tear. I started realizing that lying isn't always about words. Sometimes it's about tone, about saying something in the wrong language to hide the right pain. That I remember one afternoon in a small cafe, I overheard two locals talking. One said, "Det går nok," which means, "It'll be okay." Such a simple phrase, yet it hit me. Because it wasn't fake optimism. It was calm acceptance. The Danish way of saying, pain is part of life, but it passes when you stop running from it. That night I walked home along the frozen canal. The city lights reflected off the water like tiny stars trying to survive the wind. I stopped and whispered to myself, "Det går nok." For the first time, I didn't feel like I was lying. Living in Copenhagen taught me that silence can be both a mirror and a teacher. When you stop filling it with excuses, you start hearing the quiet truth underneath, the one that's been waiting for you to listen. And slowly through that silence, I began to rediscover something I'd forgotten: my ability to feel, to listen, and maybe someday to trust again. Lost in 2 languages. Learning English while trying to survive in Denmark felt like juggling 2 mirrors. Each one showing a different version of me, but neither quite real. I was constantly switching. Danish in the supermarket, English in class, silence at home. My brain was exhausted, like it was buffering between 2 worlds. You see, when you move abroad, your identity starts to melt a little. Every time I opened my mouth, I wondered, do I sound smart? Do I sound foreign? Do I sound fake? I tried to copy native accents, to sound confident, to sound like someone who had it all together. But the truth? I was just trying not to sound broken. One day, during English conversation class, the teacher asked, "What's one thing you regret not saying?" The room went quiet. Everyone stared at the floor. And suddenly I said, "The truth." My voice cracked. People smiled politely, thinking I was joking. But I wasn't. I wanted to say that I regretted not speaking up when I was lied to. I regretted being fluent in pretending. That's when I realized learning English wasn't my real challenge. The real challenge was learning to mean what I say, to connect words to feelings again. Because grammar can't save you from emotional silence, I started to notice how languages shape emotion. In Danish, hjertesorg means heart sorrow. In English, we say heartbreak. Different words, same ache. Somehow saying it in English felt softer, easier to share. Maybe that's why I started writing my story in English. It gave me distance from the pain, just enough space to breathe. But that distance also made me feel lost. Between 2 languages, 2 selves. One that still heard in my native tongue, and one trying to heal in English. Yet, there's something magical about getting lost in words. When you no longer know which language to cry in, you start learning the universal one: honesty. And little by little, between listening to slow English podcasts, whispering words to myself, and talking to strangers at cafes, I began to rebuild not just my vocabulary, but my truth. Because sometimes finding your voice in a new language is the only way to hear who you've always been. The mirror moment. It happened one evening, the kind of cold, blue evening that Denmark does so well. I came home from class, tossed my backpack onto the floor, and stood in front of the mirror. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the radiator. And there it was, my reflection looking back at me like a stranger. My eyes looked tired, my smile rehearsed. For a moment I didn't see me. I saw someone trying too hard to be fine in 2 languages. You ever catch yourself pretending so well that you forget what the truth even feels like? That was me. Smiling, speaking English fluently, saying I'm okay, when my whole body whispered, "No, you're not." That night I realized something painful. I wasn't just lied to by someone else. I had been lying to myself. pretending that I'd moved on, that I'd forgiven, that I was learning English just for fun, when deep down I was learning because I couldn't find the words to explain my pain in my own language anymore. They say mirrors don't lie, but they don't tell the full truth either. They only show the surface, not the quiet war happening inside. I wanted to break that reflection, to start over. Instead, I sat down and did something strange. I recorded myself speaking English. Not reading, not practicing, just talking. The first few seconds were awkward. My voice sounded shaky, unfamiliar. But then as I spoke, something cracked open. Words started flowing, messy, emotional, real. I said things I hadn't admitted to anyone. That I missed who I was before the lie, that I didn't know how to trust again, that I felt invisible even when surrounded by people. And somehow hearing my own voice say those things in English made them feel true in every language. It hit me then. Maybe finding your truth isn't about confronting the person who hurt you. It's about facing the reflection you've been avoiding. In that mirror, I didn't see weakness. I saw a person learning to speak again, not just with words but with honesty. Because when you finally stop lying to yourself, even your silence starts to sound like freedom. Learning to listen again. There's a strange thing that happens after heartbreak. The world gets loud. Every thought, every memory, every what if screams inside your head. But one morning, walking to language school under soft Danish rain, I realized I hadn't truly listened in months. Not to people, not to English, not even to myself. I was just surviving the noise. So I made a quiet promise to start listening again. But not in the way we usually do, not just to understand words but to understand feelings. Every day I'd put on my headphones and listen to slow English podcasts, stories about courage, forgiveness, resilience. First, they were just background noise. But slowly, I began to hear the rhythm of something deeper. A calmness that had been missing in me. You know what's fascinating? The brain doesn't just process sound. It mirrors emotion. Scientists call it empathic resonance. When you listen deeply, your body syncs with what you hear. That's why a calm voice can slow your heartbeat. And that's how language started healing me, one slow, honest sentence at a time. Sometimes I'd repeat phrases aloud while walking. I'm learning. I'm healing. I'm still here. First it felt silly. But hearing my own voice again in English gave me permission to exist, to feel, to breathe without apology. Listening became my therapy. I started noticing details I used to ignore. The sound of rain tapping my window, children laughing in Danish, the distant bells from the cathedral near my street. Those sounds stitched me back to reality. And the more I listened to the world, the more I could finally hear my inner voice, the one I'd silenced with self-blame and guilt. It whispered softly, "You're not broken. You're just learning a new way to understand yourself." That's when it clicked. Language learning isn't just about speaking fluently. It's about listening fully to life, to people, and to the quiet lessons hidden in pain. Because sometimes before you can speak your truth, you have to learn to hear it first. Speaking my own truth. The first time I spoke my story out loud in English, my voice trembled. I was in a small classroom at the language center, the kind with posters of idioms and world maps on the wall. The teacher had asked us to share a personal experience that changed your life. My classmates talked about travel, family, or jobs. I hesitated, then decided to tell the truth. I was lied to, I said. Just 3 words. But they echoed through the room like a confession. I expected pity, maybe silence. Instead, one woman from Spain smiled softly and said, "Me too." Then another classmate nodded. In that moment, I realized honesty is a universal language, one that needs no translation. After that day, I started speaking English differently. Slower, clearer, more honest. I wasn't chasing fluency anymore. I was chasing truth. Every time I practiced speaking, I wasn't performing, I was releasing. Words that had once felt heavy became lighter. There's something deeply healing about hearing your pain in your own voice. When you say it out loud, it stops hiding in the dark corners of your mind. Neuroscientists call this verbal labeling. When you name your emotions, your brain's amygdala, the part that triggers fear, calms down. Basically, speaking your truth literally rewires your brain for peace. So, I started recording myself every morning. Just 2 minutes a day, talking about how I felt, what I learned, what I hoped for. Some days my voice cracked. Other days it was strong and steady. And slowly my English improved, not because I studied harder, but because I stopped censoring myself. You see, honesty sharpens your speech. When you stop editing your emotions, your words flow naturally. I began sharing my thoughts online. Short videos, little reflections. To my surprise, people responded. Not because my English was perfect, but because it was real. And that's when I understood something beautiful. When you speak your truth, no matter the language, someone somewhere will understand you, because authenticity doesn't need subtitles. Denmark taught me honesty. Denmark has this quiet magic. It teaches you things without saying them. People here don't make big speeches about integrity or healing. They live it in the simplest ways. They show up on time. They mean what they say. They don't use 10 words when 3 are enough. At first I thought it was cold. Now I think it's courage. One of my Danish friends once told me, "Ærlighed varer længst." Honesty lasts the longest. I didn't understand it then. But over time I saw it everywhere. In how they talk, how they work, even how they drink coffee. If they like you, they say so. If they don't, they still smile, but they don't pretend. There's no small talk to hide behind. That honesty rubbed off on me. Slowly it started shaping how I spoke, not just in Danish but in English too. When I didn't understand something, I stopped pretending. When I felt lost, I said it out loud. And strangely, people connected with me more when I stopped trying to sound perfect. In Denmark, silence isn't awkward. It's respected. It gives space for truth to land. During long winter nights, I'd sit by the window watching candles flicker, that famous Danish hygge atmosphere. But for me, it wasn't about cozy blankets or hot cocoa. It was about learning to sit with my truth without running away. Honesty here isn't sharp. It's soft, like snow falling on the city. It doesn't attack, it reveals. And that's when I realized, the lie that once broke me was actually my first teacher. It forced me to build a new kind of honesty, one that starts inside. Now, when I practice English, I focus on truth before fluency. When I say I'm okay, I check if I really mean it. If not, I rephrase. Because words are powerful, they shape the stories we live in. Denmark didn't just teach me how to live simply. It taught me how to live honestly in any language. And maybe that's the real fluency we're all searching for. Finding freedom in the lie. It took me years to understand that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself from the story that hurt you. I used to think the person who lied had stolen something from me, my trust, my peace, my confidence. But one quiet morning by the lake in Aarhus, watching sunlight break through the fog, I realized they hadn't taken my truth. I had just stopped living it. That day I said it out loud in English. I forgive you. Not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. And right after I whispered, I forgive me too. Because I'd been angry at myself for believing, for staying silent, for pretending everything was fine. But those mistakes were human. And in a strange way, they were the bridge that brought me here, to honesty, to self-understanding, to freedom. Sometimes I think about that lie and how it cracked my world open. It taught me that truth isn't something you find once. It's something you practice every day. In the way you speak, the way you listen, the way you show up. Every time I practice English now, it feels different. It's not just grammar or pronunciation. It's a reminder that my voice matters. That it carries stories, scars, laughter, and lessons. That it's mine. And maybe that's what real fluency means, not sounding native but sounding authentic. Speaking words that align with your heart, even if your accent still wobbles. Because people don't connect to perfect English. They connect to real emotion. When he lied, I thought I'd lost everything. But in truth, I found something better: my voice, my honesty, my freedom. And if you're listening to this wondering if you'll ever find yours, you will. Start small. Speak slowly. Tell the truth even if it trembles, because your truth, once spoken, will never leave you again.